All right. We have a lot of people still signing in. It seems like we have a record attendance today. This is great. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today's roundtable discussion, AI and water trends. My name is Rajan Ray. I'm the VP of Strategy and Marketing with Trinnex, and I'm very excited about today's topic. I don't know about all of you, but the pace and speed of the technology, in particular AI, is a little bit head spinning. We're seeing so many AI powered solutions everywhere, merging and the water space, just things that we weren't even being able to identify or imaginable about a few years ago. So everything from large learning models, deep learning AI agents, our kids using AI to write essays. So it's all across the board. But a lot of these kind of trends, it's nice to take a step back to kind of have a discussion. And I'm very happy to have an expert panel to talk about some of these practical applications of these trends and how we could help water utilities can understand what's possible, what's coming next, and how to prepare for the future. Before we do get started, a few housekeeping items. This presentation will be about 45 minutes with Q&A at the tail end. At the bottom of your screen, there is a little Q&A button. That's where you're going to submit questions. Please do anytime during this webinar, and we'll do our best to answer those live, or if not live, we'll answer them after the fact. So I'll do a quick introduction to Trinnex, and then we'll get into our expert panel. So what I love about Trinnex is one of the best teams I've worked with in my career. We have a teams of data scientists and software engineering nerds, stayed in the most loving fashion, coupled with practitioners, engineering consultants with a lot of domain experience in the water domain, decades of experience. And we have three core areas of business and really just want to build solutions that better the water space and better protect public health. So, but the main areas of business is digital consulting. That ranges from digital road mapping, master planning, to digital warehouse or data warehouse and data science as a service. We have custom solutions for when there's not a direct fit in the market, or you need integration support, or just there's a specific application that you're looking to build in mobile or desktop or cloud. And then lastly, we have commercial software, and that ranges from water quality compliance from lead in drinking water all the way to digital twins. And we have a platform that kind of hosts an AI-enabled platform that supports integrations as well as data analytics and visualization of the CAS platform. So let's get into it. The exciting part of this webinar is really our all-star panelists. So I'll introduce briefly, and then we'll go into each one of our panelists, and they'll give a little bit more further introduction to their background. But we have Amy Corriveau, who's our fearless leader at Trinnex, our president. Jennifer Prescott, Senior Vice President, Chief Digital Information Officer at CDM Smith. We're happy to have Craig Daly, as Deputy Chief of Engineering and Asset Management at Howard County. So before we get into our specific their introductions, just as the theme of this webinar is kind of productivity, doing more with less, really. So one thing as an icebreaker, just if you guys could share a work or life productivity hack, whatever comes to mind. You know, I'll give you an example. One of mine I've been using for the past year is just blocking out my calendar for focused time to spend it on one task. Maybe a no-brainer to some of you, but like multitasking is not my strength. And using my phone to on focus mode, so I don't have any distractions. So I'm like fully committed to getting done whatever I need to get done. So that's mine. But Jennifer, let's start with you. If you don't mind sharing a little bit more about your background and what your productivity hack is.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jennifer Prescott. I am the Chief Digital Information Officer for CDM Smith. I've been here about 2 years. I look after all things digital strategy, and all things IT, so anything technology related. Prior to CDM Smith, I was CIO at another engineering firm. And prior to that, I led IT strategy. So I was VP IT strategy and digital transformation at Molson Coors. So a large manufacturing consumer products company, which funny enough has a lot of crossover into the water world. So I dealt a lot with that. So my productivity hack, working mom, don't have a lot of time. Part of my job is to make sure I stay current and smart about what's happening in the world. And that's really hard from a time perspective, just because the pace of technology keeps changing, competitors keep evolving. So I use LinkedIn as my place I was already there. I was already there as a colleague to celebrate people that got new jobs and, see what was happening at my company. So since I was already there, I started to dial in my feed and follow all kinds of small, large companies, interesting personalities in technology, interesting, people that are moving forward in our water and AI space. And now, Saturday afternoon when I'm having coffee, I can just hang out on LinkedIn, and it's an approachable way for me to get a broader perspective and stay smart, as well as connect with my work world. So that's mine.
Love it. Yeah, that's great. It's great advice to you. It is a wealth of information. Craig, if you don't mind going next.
Sure. Craig Daly, Deputy Chief of Engineering and Asset Management at Howard County. It's kind of a dual role. I work for the Chief of Engineering, supporting the engineering division, but also have to get the asset management initiative off the ground and get that rolling. So that's two major areas that I'm focusing on right now. I have over 20 years experience in the water industry, working for a variety of organizations, both public and private. Prior to joining Howard County, actually prior to joining the public sector again with City of Baltimore, prior to joining here, I spent a lot of time with Xylem and Pure, being a data geek for the most part, really diving in, understanding data, finding out interesting ways and interesting trends and patterns, and really looking at these new technologies and saying, wow, these are exciting. You can do great things with these things. And yeah, just trying to deploy those and build products with that stuff. So it was kind of an interesting journey to get to where I am today, where now we're starting from scratch with an asset management program and trying to figure out ways in which we can now start integrating some of those technologies into where we're headed. And we'll get more into this when I start talking, but we got to start somewhere, and that's kind of maybe part of this conversation is, where do we start? How do we start? So my productivity hacks, I got two. First one is I have the 2-minute rule. If it takes me 2 minutes or less, I'll do it. I'll get it done, get it out of the way. If it's bigger, I'm going to have to prioritize that and plan and then schedule it. As I'm doing that, I take the Lego approach to productivity, where I like to sort of break things down, like basically just, destroy the house, take all these building blocks and start building things up again until I get something that seems to be reasonably, stable, structured, and then it's good and get it moving. The thing I like about that is, I can build modular pieces that, get me moving. So instead of having to sort of go ahead and build the entire house, maybe I can just build, the foundation and move forward. Maybe that foundation works for a number of different things. So basically, I always try to think of ways in which that I can build a modular piece that's reusable, reusable in the future or reusable for other applications. So those are my hacks.
All right, I love it. Great. Amy, over to you.
My name is Amy Corriveau, and I'm the president of Trinnex, and we launched back in 2022. Prior to launching, I've been with CDM Smith for since 2020. So actually, I'm dating myself, and I've been in the industry a few years before that. As a civil engineer with a real passion for technology and data, and really Trinnex has been that perfect marriage of bringing that data nerd in me, that tech nerd in me, with the ability to work with clients in this public infrastructure space. So it's been a real journey and certainly a passion. Raj, you joked about the pace of technology and trying to come up with hacks to keep up. And certainly I've had to add quite a few in the past few years. It's hard to believe since COVID, things could get even faster. It certainly felt like they were at a peak, and then a few years ago. I feel like ChatGPT rolled out and everything has just sort of been a blur since then. But I have a couple, I guess one, I certainly moved everything to digital, so I'm never without either my iPhone or my iPad, just so I have everything right there at my fingertips. That helps a lot. The other is I subscribe to a variety of different newsletters and things just to try to stay up on as many headlines as possible. To Jen's point, a working mom as well, it's hard to juggle those. So it's amazing how many of those you can read while watching a basketball game or some kind of sporting event in between, just to stay up on the latest. A lot of the new AI platforms as well. Perplexity is one of my favorites, where I can quickly dive in on my phone and just see the latest trends and headlines, and it'll summarize everything for me. So those are some of the hacks that I'm using, in addition to some of the techniques everybody else mentioned. So.
It's great. It's great. Excellent. Yeah. And if as participants, there's a lot of you. If you guys want to share any of your productivity hacks, feel free to throw them in the Q&A panel. We could compile them and send them out to the group. But I love hearing these very practical, tactical types of actions that we could do, just kind of make our lives easier. All right, let's get into the discussion. We'll have we'll break it up into 4 parts. The first one will be identifying key areas of AI applications. And I'd like to frame out the discussion, not get right into the technology or the application, but take a little bit of a step back to think about what are the current challenges that utilities are facing. And there's no better person to represent that than Craig, who's at Baltimore County. So Craig, do you mind chatting a little bit, like what are some of the things that you're seeing with your utility or with others in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely no shortage of challenges, obviously. You can kind of, you probably go through and just talk about all the different challenges, but really, I guess from my perspective, where I'm starting now, where we're trying to get an asset management program started with Howard County. One of the biggest challenges that we're going to be facing is people. When we look at asset management, we tend to think of, oh well, it's a technology that's going to do this, or there's a software that does that, and all these things. But at the end of the day, people do asset management. It's people who have to ultimately make the decisions. It's people who have to be aware of what the assets are there for, what the value of the assets are, what levels of service they have to provide, and we have to build all that up. So we're kind of starting from ground zero in that respect. So when you look at the people, I mean, there's certainly, kind of these categories of problems that we're facing. Number one, aging workforce. We've got a lot of, people that are getting ready to retire. And with that, they're taking a lot of critical knowledge with them. I mean, we got people who've been operating these systems for decades. I mean, in some cases, we got people who've been working, 30, 40, 50 years. And they just have all this institutional knowledge that is going to leave with them. And we don't really have good ways to capture that information, record what they're doing, record what they know, which is a challenge because, we don't want that to leave. And it certainly makes the learning curve for newer people coming in that much greater when they take that knowledge away with them. Sort of on the heels of that one, sure, we can just hire people, but hiring is becoming increasingly difficult for whatever reason. We want to bring new staff in before people retire, but we're finding it hard just to get people in on time before people retire. And even then, there's certain rules in place that make it difficult to hire before people retire. So we don't get a lot of overlap time. So, we lose the knowledge, but we don't have a lot of time to actually transfer that knowledge. So we need to find ways to transfer that knowledge quickly, easily, have ways in which we can, store it and pull it out for the new people that come in. Because there might be a lot of things that we don't even think to capture that we want to capture for use. So, the other thing is we got local work pools where, we're all competing for the same resources. So how do we get people in when we're being competitive against one another? So what that sort of leaves is a bunch of people that are retiring and a sort of an inability to backfill. So we need to be efficient with what we can get. So that's, a whole bunch there in terms of challenges, but it ultimately leads to a workload problem. And the workload problem, we got a couple things going on there. One is not being able to fully resource our operations, but as our infrastructure gets older, it doesn't fail any less. It actually starts failing more, which means that our workload, per person starts picking up. So we need to find efficient ways to balance that workload out to make sure that we can effectively use the people that we have, but also not lose our ability to be proactive. Because really what starts happening is, as we lose the knowledge, people have to figure out things. It takes longer to get things done. We got more work happening because things are failing faster. We've got fewer people to do it. And so we end up in this reactionary mode, and reactionary mode tends to overtake all the proactive stuff we should be doing. So really what we're looking for is ways in which we can, capture the knowledge, transfer knowledge, and, get that efficiently into new staff with knowing that we're probably gonna have fewer people, but, then getting our whole operation to work in a very smooth, orderly fashion. So we're still remaining proactive.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Yeah, that's I think all the utilities that are representing the participants are probably agreeing and nodding with acknowledgement of that challenge. I think it is certainly something we've hear from many other utilities. The workforce challenge constraints is tough. So I think it's a good potentially segue into like doing more with less resources. And Jen, you want to talk to that?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a big part of what I'm in charge of, and our strategy is really about doing more with less. And that's unlocking productivity and getting people, the speed into their day. And we'll talk a little bit about that, capturing the knowledge as well, which is relevant in this industry. So first, in doing more with less, I think just starting at the very beginning, which is the public tools. And there's a new one every day. So Amy mentioned Perplexity. There was a new announcement on Grok, Midjourney. OpenAI always has something new, a new ChatGPT, Uplevel or Sora. There's so many. And I think the first thing we had to do is decide what's our policy. And we took a policy, which a lot of companies take, which is they're allowed. And they're allowed to be used, but validate the results, and nothing company confidential. Unless you have an enterprise license, nothing company confidential should go anywhere like that. But we have a lot of people that are seeing huge benefits just with that. So write a job description, create an agenda that does X, Y, Z. It's a muscle to build to learn how to just put AI tools into your daily life. I use it even for calculations. So then we go to Microsoft Copilot. And we've been investing in the Microsoft Copilot technology. And that has been amazing for a lot of people. So we record meetings, and then you can get summaries of meetings, action items. They go faster. That's been one of the fun benefits. Summarizing large documents. We're seeing some benefits now in Excel. The product set from Microsoft continues to get better. Now, there are competing products, but we're seeing this kind of assistant, this Copilot, be something that a lot of people are getting hours back every week. So that's a little bit about some of that speed. But then we go to partners in broader ways. So we've used software companies to do things like invoice reconciliation or help with our travel expense entry. And we've been able to save, I think, 5 people's worth of work on invoicing, because we were able to speed up and automate that process so significantly. And there's a lot out there. And I would say to this group, AI is hard, it's expensive. So you're talking war for talent that are AI savvy, you're talking compute, money, all these things. So being able to buy something that's relevant to lots of different companies, something that can help you, whatever that is, sell or invoice or whatever the basic process is, that's been something that we're being able to unlock again, more benefits of that, doing more with less. And the trick there is not duplicating licenses and costing too much money, right? And really making sure what your company does, that you get a lot of value from. And the last bit that we've been working on is, where is our data gold? And for us, it's our people who works at CDM Smith and our projects. And so that's where we've been able to lean in with custom AI. And we used an Azure OpenAI, but the point there is we're able to prompt engineer that into ways that we can really use that data. And that's where I'd say that knowledge management that Craig was talking about. You can speed up things, that gives people some time back. But how do you get that knowledge of your plant, of your utility, of your company? And whether or not that's in SharePoint, and you can unlock it with now Copilot agents that can search that, or if you have to create something custom, there's just so much there that you can really take advantage of your knowledge and your data and then share it across the company. So that's really where we're seeing a lot of benefits to do more with less.
Yeah, great tips. I love it. I think some of the things you'll put in place, we'll have a section coming up around some quick wins that we can implement. But like those are great advice of actually things that you've seen that has worked and actually you quantify. It's really excellent to share that. Amy, we have kind of different perspectives on this call, from a utility to a consulting firm to vendor / services company. In terms of identifying key areas for AI applications, any thoughts on your side?
Yeah, I mean, I think the possibilities are endless. But thinking, if I'm putting myself in the audience, in their shoes, I'm looking at it from the perspective of where would I see the best benefit, and I really think it's addressing some of the key pain points that Craig talked about, right? And the workforce, we knew workforce was a key issue again. Years ago, we've been talking about the silver tsunami, and it's really only gotten worse. And I think AI really poses a huge benefit to all of our industries by really being able to seize and augment that workforce gap, right? And whether it's productivity gains that Jen was alluding to, or really supplementing a real workforce crisis that we're facing on the utility side, it really gives that ability to enable and put the power back into the hands that are there, right, to supplement and reduce some of the more manual or mundane tasks, so employees can focus on that higher value work, right, and really focusing on the activities that are repetitive or, like I said, highly manual. If you step back and really look for those activities, I think that's where AI can serve, especially right now. That's where AI can serve the biggest value to organizations, and really tailor the work activities of the workforce that is there on those key key events, right? So if you have limited crews out in the field and you're able to have an AI work on your data, for example, you can pinpoint perhaps those assets that are about to fail, right? Or you can use it to analyze data and hone in on where you actively have leaks in the system, and use the limited crew time that you may have in the field on those actual assets that need that attention, right? Same thing on the customer service side, leveraging AI for some of the automated chatbots can save some of the time for the staff that are in the office, so they can address speaking with customers or customer complaints, or that face time that you need with your customers. So really as an augmentation to supplement that gap that everybody is facing and struggling with, to Craig and Jen's point.
Well stated. Thank you. That's great. So we'll keep moving forward. I think that after identifying the key areas, there's what typically happens in the conversation. I think talking utility professionals is like, what are the barriers for AI adoption? Like how do we overcome them? So I do want to kick off that discussion. Craig, anything you want to relay around building trust and transparency in these new types of technology?
Yeah, I think there's always that's one what's in it for me perspective, right? So I think people need to appreciate how this can help them, and really part of that starts beginning with, well, what do you need to know? What do you need to understand? What needs to be done? Why do we need to do it? Answering kind of all those sorts of questions, and building people's understanding of the expectation of what is needed. And part of that's also coming up with a common language, so we are all talking the same way. Probably not proper English, but anyway, we got to be able to communicate with one another about what the expectations are before we can even start thinking about how can technology help us. We need to think about the processes that are in place. How do we go about doing what we need to get done? What are the steps we need to take? And understanding where the efficiencies are in those processes, where the inefficiencies are. Because from there you can start saying, well, I know what I need to get done. I know kind of where things are working okay, but I know where things are not working. And then you can start saying, well, how can technology help me there? And that's where probably the biggest opportunity to get buy-in and the what's in it for me in place exists, from what I can see anyway. I think there's a tendency for people to jump in and say, well, let's take technology first. I see a great asset management software and it's going to solve all my asset management problems. But the reality is, it may not work for people if they don't understand where they fit into the process, what's expected of them in that process. But once they understand that and they see how this tool can help them sort of implement and improve, then they tend to say, oh yeah, I get it. I know what I got to do. I know how this is going to help me now. So, without strong processes and engaged people, the solutions will fail. So we have to build, the process, and we have to get people engaged in order for these tools to be adopted. The other barrier that I see out there is fear. I think we've all been exposed to great software, but it's complex. And when you say, oh, we're going to do this thing, everyone's like, oh, geez, this is going to take a long time for me to learn. I'm never going to know the full how it works and all that sort of stuff. Again, I think this is a really great place where AI can help us out, particularly these large language models. You can just say, hey, I need to do this, or I want to see what the trend is here, just in typing a language, and say, I want to see the graph or the trend of the breaks over the past month, and it'll produce that for you. So I think that barrier to entry is also going down. And I think people just need to be exposed a bit more to the tools and the changes and how much easier things are getting. So when we talk about these changes, it's not this big fearful, I got to learn a whole new application out there. So, that's fairly brief, but that's generally what I see.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's, yeah, the people and process is a huge aspect of that adoption for sure. On that note, part of the building trust, but also being responsible with the technology and AI adoption is the topic of governance and ethics. And there's no one better to talk more about that than Jennifer, who's been leading that at CDM Smith.
Sure. So a couple things, very meaty topic and scary, really. So we last summer stood up an AI governance board, and we assigned people to research and stay current on all things that were coming out from regulations. We've started to see things for engineering boards, states, European Act, right? I mean, there's a lot of movement out here in really being responsible with AI and what you can and can't do. We've had clients say, please disclose where you've used AI. So we had a lot of a reason to set up an AI governance. So AI governance includes a representative from legal, from compliance, from our business unit leadership, cybersecurity head, and then we assigned 2 people, including also myself, but we assigned 2 people, one from compliance, one from the data security, data privacy team, to fully look after what was happening in the world, right? Go to the webinars, come back and bring back the documentation and the rules, and then guide us. And that group's been great. We were able to create a risk framework. We've made decisions. I'll give you an example. We decided as a group to block DeepSeek. That came out. It was really buzzy a couple of weeks ago. And again, we have people monitoring it. And so we quickly said, is this something that we really want our work, our employees using with our company confidential or our client data? Nope. So we immediately blocked it and communicated that out. We did things like, oh, we keep our meeting recordings automatically for 10 days, and then they go away. And that was something that, again, these were intentional decisions. There's a lot more that we're going to continue to do. And what I would also say is it only works if the village is being secure with you. So we created an all things AI portal. We have all of our policies, our responsible governance, we maintain it. So we emphasize this is where you can get tools and prompts and lean into AI. But this is also where your rules are, right? These are the policies, what you can and can't do. And we make sure that we live that. So we created this portal, and then we've been growing our training across the full company. Deep fake, not to be confused with deep seek. There was some real threats last year that showed up where people were texted or contacted and people faked being somebody at the company and sent money. And so for us to embed that into our training and embed that into, our just AI acumen has been important. So again, I'd say it does take the whole village. So all the people that you work with and making sure that they're really tuned in to these new threats.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well stated. I think that ties well with that other aspect of governance and ethics of cybersecurity,
Right.
and some of the data privacy regulations. And I don't know, Amy, anything you want to share on that side?
Yeah, so again, cyber is one of those topics we could probably be talking for at least another hour. And certainly many of the folks that have joined us today, I know cyber is something they're concerned about and contend with day in and day out, right? We know obviously cyber crimes are on the rise, they're pervasive. And our water industry is a top target, right, from a critical infrastructure perspective. So it's certainly a topic of urgent importance, and cyber needs to be one of those key areas that every organization, every water and wastewater utility is focused on. I would say fixated on almost. Because it is that much of a threat. Jen brought up deepfake, and there's a famous scenario, right, where last year, Arup, a global consulting firm, unfortunately was swindled out of like 25 million, right? But from a very sophisticated deep fake that made it look like their CFO told someone to do it on a video conference. So it was very, very, very sophisticated. And the amount of AI generated content in that deep fake world is only going to grow. I read an estimate that it could be up to 40 billion in fraud losses this year alone. Globally. So it's real. And I think what scares me the most about AI, that double-edged sword, is that phishing attempts are obviously the number one way that most of these bad actors get into an organization. It's the number one easy attack method, certainly for ransomware and a variety of other really bad situations. And now AI just made it almost, just made it easy and very difficult to detect, because now AI can basically tell anyone, any bad actor, very simply how to conduct a very sophisticated phishing attack, put the code right in their hands. Historically, phishing emails were easy to spot, right? Grammatically, they were very easy to detect. They weren't translated in English very well often. They were just very simple. That's gone now, right? I mean, if anybody has used any of the generative AI tools, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini's tools or any of them out there, it's designed to help you rewrite something. Raj, you joked about our kids writing essays. I have 2 in college and 1 in high school. They know every tool out there, and it's designed to help them write. And so that makes all of those easy to spot phishing emails almost impossible to detect, right? Solved all those translation errors, solved all those grammatical errors. And so they're very sophisticated now. So it does worry me. It does concern me. I think all more that you really need to make sure you have strong cyber tools, AI-powered cyber tools, especially when it comes to phishing protection, just to make sure that they can also keep up with the advances that are happening out in that cyberspace, and make sure that really that you're able to stop those attacks from coming in, because that's your first line of defense for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. It is, yeah, it is a double-edged sword for sure, because it's weighing up the benefits and the risk. Is a calculation we all have to do when trying to adopt these tools. Oh, the next topic is going to be, as the panelists who got together, we wanted to kind of give some practical tips or what we'll call quick wins this year. What can we do to implement some quick wins at our organizations? And so, Amy, I'll start back up with you, if you don't mind. Any examples you want to share with the group?
Sure. So I'm a big proponent of experimenting with some of these tools safely. Obviously, you have to be very careful about data privacy and what you're putting out there. And I was telling retelling a story to a client the other day about how we had used Notebook LM, that's Google's AI-powered research tool, to interact with some client-specific information. And if you've not used that tool, you can load up content information and interact with it in a large language model. It takes advantage of a variety of Google's large language models, and it'll generate a podcast for you. It'll generate audio content that you can interact with. And this is right after it had come out with this feature. And so we had done that with a client. We had taken a very technical memo. It's like upwards of 50 pages, right? And we know that those take quite a bit of time to review on the client side. And so one of our folks had done this and generated a podcast. And it was so entertaining. It was so, like, I listened to the whole thing, and you would not know that it had been generated from AI. I enjoyed that. You could and he just did the native one, like you could interact with it and structure it a variety of different ways. And had also shared it with the client. The client loved it and thought it was a great use of a way to introduce newer staff on board and train. And so I was telling that to another client and suggesting, he could do something similar. He's the head of an organization that is not the standard municipal water utility, very complicated structure. And I won't go into all of the details, but it makes it very difficult when they have political changes, right? When the mayor and the board of aldermen rotate. And so I had suggested, there's a lot of information out in the public domain that describe their entity and the structure. The Public Utility Commission has a lot of information that they have to weigh in on, and so lots of great material that they could use and take advantage of. So it was challenge accepted by this particular client. He leveraged some of his younger staff who are a little bit more comfortable experimenting with these types of tools. And he said once they got a hold of some of these documents, they were able to generate within 5 minutes this really entertaining podcast that they could use to help as you have political turnover or they're onboarding new folks, as an entertaining way to understand, instead of handing them a 3-ring binder full of very technical explanation of how they're structured. And it's really become a part of how they're going to interact, and it's part of their public communication strategy now. So I thought it was a really neat way to show that you can evolve and use this technology, and I think the younger generation will appreciate that type of dialogue a lot more than the static report that may sit on a shelf. So
yeah. That's great. Yeah, we've seen it used for technical memo delivery. Some of those can be super super dry, to say the least. But actually using it where now the client can, on the way to work, can listen to it and actually get a sense of what the project was all about and the outcomes is pretty interesting.
Mhm.
All right. Craig, over to you, and just heads up to the panelists. We'll kind of quickly go through the quick wins because we do have a document that we'll send out following the things on some quick wins. So if you could share an example or two on your side, would be great.
I don't have as good an example as that. I mean, that's got my mind racing. I got all kinds of ideas now. But really where we're at is we've got a vision. We want to, achieve this, asset management goal. Got a, objectives that we want to meet. And, ultimately what we really have to start setting are our metrics and our levels of service. And as probably most utilities are aware, we probably have data all over the place. It's probably all siloed, it's in different locations. So really what we want to do is sort of hone in on some of those metrics and some of those levels of service we want and saying, all right, well, where's the data? And then we want to look for ways to try and get that data together. And that there's all kinds of, opportunities for us to start looking at how that data can sort of move from the existing, process into those metrics so that we can start seeing where we are, how we're performing, and where we can look for opportunities to improve. But part of that is also like, that data's got to be continually fed. And one of the things that I see on the horizon that we're going to have to contend with is like, well, we've got fewer people, we're losing some of the staff. Some of the people who collect the data have it in a spreadsheet on their computer. When they go, that's not going to be maintained. So are there ways in which we can sort of look to these technologies to make it so that we get that data without adding additional workload? How can they collect that information while they're out in the field? Everyone's got a cell phone. Everyone knows how to use a cell phone. It's not like, nobody uses chat these days. I think everyone's using chat. So are there ways for us to sort of bring all that stuff together so we can make it that simple that when they're out working, they just simply have to do a chat, get information that goes to our data source, and then we get all our metrics updated. So that's kind of one of the objectives that we're shooting for. And I say quick win, with probably in the next year, hopefully we can get something like that for a few of our metrics, not all of our metrics, but at least get started.
Yeah, great. Excellent. And Jenna, what I'm going to do just because we just want to be sensitive on the time here. If you feel free to share a win, but we'll transition that topic to what you're excited about next year or this year within the next 12 months, just because things are moving so fast. 12 months seems like a lifetime with all this emerging technology. So if you don't mind, sharing whatever you want. No.
Yeah, I'll come back to quick wins because I think there's some things that are applicable to most people that are joining this webinar. I'd say my thought here is widen your circle. And I think there's two ways to do that. And the first is there's probably employees that are already doing things that are more advanced. It has been our experience that we've been shocked when we started to encourage people to share prompts and share examples. People are using AI in ways we didn't even know or think of. And then it's sharing that, right? Building that muscle, that flywheel, where you're spreading that ability to use AI in great ways at your company. So I think it's really embracing using employees. We created AI trailblazers. We do webinars. We have our portal where we're, again, giving prompt of the day, all the ways that you engage employees. And then the second one is partners. I mean, for us, we had to pick, and we picked some partners. And that's been the big accelerator, because the partners are being able to bring AI solutions that advance us much quicker than us trying to build it on our own. What am I excited about? I mean, digital twin, it's probably, something that has been talked about a long time. Again, I came from manufacturing, and this was the get, right? Can you predict and forecast and optimize and maintain and truly get to that proactive space where you just have the best possible outcomes? I'm in it, and I think it's exciting because technology is really advancing quickly to make that more of a reality. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, great. Yeah, me too. Amy, over to you. What's on your mind for the?
Yeah, it's hard to predict what's coming, right? like I would have felt more comfortable a few months ago. All of us were certainly caught off guard by DeepSeek and some of those changes. I do love the whole concept of machine learning and being able to predict, right? Our industry has tried to shift from reactive to proactive for a very long time, and had some successes certainly, but it's difficult with infrastructure, and whether it's buried or just obviously maintaining infrastructure is difficult to move in that environment. We all know why. We all have good motives for getting there, but just being able to get there in a real-time state is difficult, and so I'm excited about advances in being able to get access to more data to apply the predictive modeling, outcomes associated with machine learning and hopefully agentic AI, right? I think that's something that's exciting, and I think of it like the car analogy. Yes, it's useful that my car alerts me to, hey, you got to get an oil change every 6,500 miles or whatever it is. But shifting into, agentic AI and having that scenario where instead of that, I get an alert that says, your oil temperature is trending up, and based on this pressure, it's important you get into the mechanic and have them look at, the coolant system, because you might have a leak based on the data that's telling you this. I just think that is where we're heading. I would love to say that we'll be there in a few months. I think it's going to take us a little longer as an industry, but I think that's where we're heading. So we can get to that just-in-time maintenance, which is really what I think our industry needs to get to that proactive state, right? Doing maintenance on a preventive scale, we all know the value. Sometimes it's hard to prove that was the right course of action, and running an asset to failure certainly makes sense in many cases, but getting to that just in time, so hey, I addressed this before it failed, and having data to support it, I think that's really where the power is going to be in our industry. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, agreed. Craig, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm just kind of excited where I think a lot of these AI tools get to the point where they're actually going to be helpful rather than a hindrance. I think that in the past we've had some great applications developed, but they're complex and hard for people to adopt and implement. Whereas, like I say, these large language models, we can have an operator on site just say, how do I replace the gasket on this head pump here, and then it'll mine down to, okay, well, what pump do you have? Well, they just type in the make and model, and then it's like, all right, and it pulls the information up they need. That saves a ton of time because they don't even have to go try to see if they've got the manual somewhere or go to SharePoint. I mean, heaven forbid, we got to go to SharePoint because we, unless we know the structure of it, we can't find anything, right? So that's where I think all these tools really help us out in general, because we can just type in what we're looking for and we can get it.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. That's great. All right. Let's see here. I'm just going to do one last. Thanks, by the way. That's great. Great insight into what's to come here. I'm going to share one last slide before we'll have a few minutes for Q&A, but before we do, I just want to share a slide on some of the next steps that we're planning to do. So we'll do a quick poll on kind of your AI wish list. Again, super short. There's following when you close out the survey or close out the webinar, there'll be a short survey, 3 or 4 questions. It'll take you a few minutes. If you don't mind filling that out, it'll just help us improve on the next one. And then we'll have some follow-up email. One will be the link to the recorded webinar. We have this blog on 10 quick wins to kind of get into some of the details of what some of the panelists talked about today. We have a digital first resiliency guide that we'll send along. And there's a webinar that's coming up that Jennifer and one of our colleagues at Trinnex, Travis Wagner, will be part of on March 18th, the art and science of transforming data into action. So just something to come. We'll send the links following it. Jay, if you don't mind, just opening up that last poll, and then we'll get into the couple minutes into the Q&A. We'll probably won't have too much time, but we'll address any questions that came in following the webinar. Okay, which AI superpower would you most want? And out of these five options, just pick the one that would be the one your wish list or magic wand one. So predicting asset failures before they happen, optimizing chemical or energy at the treatment plant, forecasting water demand or flows, influent effluent flows with pinpoint accuracy, providing personalized water conservation tips to every customer, streamlining workforce efforts for routine operational and compliance activities. So if you guys can click on that, I'm going to stop my share here. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll hit some questions. Give me 1 minute. I'll pull some that came up here. So one question, how to get you, it's pretty, I like this because it kind of talks about the people aspect. How do you get utility management to buy in on AI initiatives? Craig, that's probably over to you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna probably point to the question because we just had a meeting with our administrators, and I think they get the idea of asset management and the value that asset management can provide. But I think they're ultimately going to come down to, well, show me the return on investment. And when we start talking return on investment, we're going to be saying, well, we need to hire people, right? We need more people. Well, if we can point to the value that some of these AI tools can provide in terms of productivity and say, well, we need to invest in this, and that will save us this much money in terms of the need, because we know we're probably not going to be able to hire all the people we need anyway. But instead of just constantly expanding that pool, we can say, well, if we invest a bit over here, we can actually trim that need down to this. Then they're going to start sort of buying in because you can see the value of it. I mean, ultimately, when we take it up the chain, it boils down to, well, how much is it going to cost? How much money do we need to spend? What's our return on investment? How is this really going to help us out? Again, it gets back to that, what's in it for me? So we need to demonstrate that, what we want to do and the tools we want to deploy are actually going to save, money, because they ultimately have to, report back to the rate or the taxpayers. And we want to demonstrate that we're doing the right things and we're deploying the right tools and we're being diligent with how we're doing that.
Great. We probably have time for one more question here. I see on the question and answer panel. So whoever wants to shout out, how are any of the panelists using AI for data analysis? Does anyone want to tackle that one? That'll probably be our last one before we wrap up.
I can maybe, I'm not doing it for data analysis, but it is sort of for data analysis. What I've been using it for is, within GIS, there's obviously like a Python, scripting tool in there. So what I've been saying is like, I want to do XYZ and I need to write a Python script that does that. And these AI tools are getting really good at starting to, develop scripts that you can run. One thing that I did was developed a Z-score tool, which allowed me to, within QGIS, actually, just automate an entire process, which gives me a gridded Z-score across my entire system. So, it's not just, what data analysis can I do, but can I build an entire workflow with data analysis in mind? So, if we sort of just focus on, I want to analyze XYZ, I want to see a graph of this, we may be limiting ourselves because we may actually be able to expand on that, particularly since, you may not be a strong coder, but you may be able to read code. And so you may be able to develop code to automate something that you really want.
Yeah, it's great. I think that's a good spot to end it, because it kind of touches on like a little bit of, it's not just one area using like spreadsheets to and the AI within Excel to look at a data set, but it's also kind of looking at it with a broad picture of like how other teams, other data sets, other IT investments can actually all meld in and have value from some of these types of analysis, and how that holistically across the organization could actually really add value to a specific activity or initiative at the utility or your organization. So thank you for that. Thank you, panelists. You guys have been fantastic. Really enjoyed this discussion. Thank you to all the participants in the audience. You guys have been great. We have a bunch of questions we'll get back to you on. Appreciate, again, your time for this roundtable discussion. I hope everyone has a good rest of 2025, implements some of this technology and reports back on what worked and what didn't work. And then we'll follow up with all the next steps as we present on the slide. But have a great rest of your day, and thank you again.
Thanks.
Thanks.